title field, the description field, the status field, and the priority field. Every workspace is going to have those fields present in it, no matter whether you start from scratch or build from a template. But the easy way to build a workspace from scratch is to let me slide over into my demo system and show you real quick how to do it. Workspaces are constructed under Administration System, and in order to make those work, you simply go into Administration System Workspaces, and you can see some of the choices you have for constructing a new workspace. You can either use the wizard, create the workspace on your own, which is from scratch, or use an existing workspace to copy it. Now, it will copy the settings in that workspace, but it doesn't copy the data underneath it, of course. So that means if you like the fields and the setup of a particular workspace, you can use this option to copy that. You can use this option to let the wizard guide you through one of the templates, or the option that I'm clicking on now allows you to create the workspace on your own. Name it whatever you'd like. Maybe you don't want to call your workspace that, but that's okay. You can link to an existing address book. If you happen to have multiples in your system, pick the one that you would like to link it to, and then click Go. The act of doing this is going to immediately create the whatever you'd like workspace behind the scenes. Now I'm running this on my desktop, but you can see that I've just built it, and I can create a brand new issue inside of it that has those fields in it. We have our contact information, of course, as a part of the address book we linked to, but our title, our priority, our status, our description, and our assignees are all present as a part of that workspace. So very straightforward to be able to build them from scratch, but lots of customers do ask us about it. So we appreciate the fact that you posed the question. Another workspace, or another question that we have about FootPrints is, what are the big differences between the 11 series of FootPrints and some of the earlier versions? This customer happened to say, hey, we're in the process of migrating to 11.6. I'd so love to see any tips highlighting the best newest features in 11, and especially 11.6. Thanks in advance. Of course, we left this part in. These sessions are awesome. We couldn't agree with you more. Thank you. And I always learn something. So the big differences really in 11.6 are twofold, and these are the two biggest differences between the 11 series and any earlier version of FootPrints. And I'll go back to my trusty workspace area here to be able to illustrate a couple of those differences for you. I'm going to move into the service desk real quick, just my demo area. The biggest differences are, as we said, twofold. The one big difference is how you administer workspaces in general. For those of you who are using earlier versions of FootPrints, this concept of Form Designer is rather different. Right? There is no such a thing in earlier versions of FootPrints, and your field design and layout doesn't look this way at all. Form Designer allows you to create your own fields and add the information that you would like using a simple drag and drop interface to make it work instead of setting it up in another way. Now, I'm running mine on a virtual machine, so it may take a second for it to show up. But the drag and drop interface that we're talking about here really allows you, with Form Designer, to create whatever kinds of forms and field structures that you would like to be able to create. Now, I'm not currently running this in Chrome, which is the browser of my choice, and that's a question that we have a little later on. But if you run it in Chrome, you'll get even faster results when you go to make this happen. The other piece that is vastly different between version 11 and earlier versions is under reporting. And really, under reporting, we get something called an executive dashboard. The executive dashboard allows us to measure trends. It builds a data mart behind the scenes, and it allows us to measure trending. We don't have really enough time to go deep into the executive dashboard on our session because we have a lot of ground to cover. But with the executive dashboard and with the creation of specific statuses and status life cycles, which I'm going to show you in a second, you can absolutely leverage that executive dashboard to let you see the life cycle of your tickets and therefore how you're doing month over month, week over week, or period over period. You can see that the Form Designer system is here, and it really allows me to drag specific fields out onto the form directly instead of having to make them in a list and place them on the document that way. So this makes it much easier to be able to manipulate the data and manipulate the form itself. And it also gives the ability to save your form as a draft ahead of time, so you don't have to publish it so people don't see it right away. Or you can choose to publish that form so that individuals will have access to it straight up. Now, the other piece that's critical for the executive dashboard to work, and of course this is telling me, hey, do you want to leave here? Earlier versions of FootPrints don't remind you of this and actually let you leave your work behind. I'll choose OK, because I'm fine to save the draft as it is. But another area that's important is the status area, and this is quite different in version 11. As you can see, I have the ability to now lay the life cycle of the statuses out. So that means folks looking at a particular status will see that status reflected as a part of the life cycle of the ticket. And this allows me to define statuses that may represent the word closed without having to use the word closed. For previous versions of FootPrints, closed was the only status that really represented the end of the life cycle. And now I can use other terms at my discretion to represent that. By using this information and coupling it with our executive dashboard, you have the ability to really track the life cycle of your tickets, and these are the biggest advantages of moving to version 11 of FootPrints. Moving on, tips on converting help desk emails into work orders. Well, as you know, FootPrints can, of course, accept emails into itself as a mechanism for crafting a ticket, right? So I can capture the information automatically anytime someone emails any workspace. Each workspace in FootPrints contains its own address. So each workspace is like a human being, really. It has its own address, its own email address, and when I email in to that particular address, I have the ability to capture that detail and let the information automatically trickle into a ticket. Now, because FootPrints does this automatically as a result of receiving emails into its email address, it manages that account just like a human would. If I were a human looking at it, I would copy and paste the information into a ticket in FootPrints, manually doing so. But FootPrints doesn't need you to do that. With FootPrints, the email automatically cuts the ticket with the subject line of the email becoming the subject or title of the ticket, and the body of the email becoming the description of the ticket. You can, through the leveraging of escalation rules, measure those subject lines for particular keywords, or you can just search the entire email string if you'd like for a keyword. And because FootPrints will track automatically if you're leveraging the source of the ticket, it'll automatically track that as having come back from an email. So it knows, hey, this information on this ticket came in from an email. Hey, as I process this, I would like an escalation rule to measure the values in this ticket that got created. Once the ticket is built, instant escalations can evaluate the ticket for the contents of it and therefore measure for particular keywords in the subject line of the email or in the body of the email, and therefore you can use that as a mechanism for assigning the ticket or categorizing the ticket. Obviously, a word of caution there, some words can be used as keywords when you didn't really mean to talk about that kind of thing in your email message, so be careful for false positives when you're setting up too many automations, because obviously if I use the word email in my message, it doesn't mean I'm talking about email as my issue. Right? So you wouldn't want FootPrints to automatically classify that as an email issue just because I said the word email in the subject line or in the body somewhere. But if you can consistently use terminologies that folks are comfortable with, you can leverage escalation rules in FootPrints to very, very quickly capture that information. I had folks ask me about browser questions all the time. Now, from a browser perspective, they all work, right? You can use Safari, you can use stuff on your Android tablet, you can use Chrome or Firefox or even Internet Explorer. But in general usage, for general web browsing, you know, this isn't an advertisement for Chrome, but Chrome tends to be the fastest browser that I've used, period, for any website, whether I'm just browsing for personal use or actually using it to host FootPrints. And when you leverage it for FootPrints, you'll find that all of the pages seem to render in a more rapid fashion. It also helps that FootPrints was actually developed, especially the newer versions, using the Chrome browser as its base. So for my money, I like to use Chrome as the browser for FootPrints. You can certainly leverage it to use any others if you want, but Chrome is the big win. This is a two-part question because it also asks about the locked by. Now, this particular customer had Trackit. Trackit let you include a field on the form, or basically on the home page, that says this record is locked by blah, 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 you know, whoever has the record open. FootPrints, of course, does automatic record locking as well. It just doesn't have a field that displays that record lock by. It's displayable. But you can, anytime you pull a ticket open, see immediately who has the record locked because it displays that information for you. So if someone's working on a ticket that you're trying to update, it will immediately tell you this record is locked by such and such a person, and then you can, if you're an administrator, relinquish their lock on it, or wait for them to relinquish that particular ticket for you. Our tickets will sometimes involve shipping out equipment. That happens. How are other people using footprints for requests like this? What does the workflow look like? Well, this is a bit of a complex one because depending upon where your process starts, right, and whenever you're mapping out a process, you have to consider where the process begins, or what's its entrance criteria, and what's its exit criteria, and then you can map all the poof and miracle happenstuffs between those two bookends. If the process begins with somebody identifying the need for shipping out a product, that's when it arrives, then that need for shipping the product is classified within the ticket as need to ship product A. The classification of the ticket would typically link product A in some way to the ticket. Now you can do this by using drop-downs or categories in the ticket itself, but we typically recommend that you leverage the CMDB and have it be the source for all products that you might ship or otherwise receive. This way you have a list of standards that you can go to. Those standards are of course maintained in the CMDB by your change process, so if the standards change, you have a mechanism for making sure that the CMDB is properly updated. Once those standards are changed, or once the ticket is linked out to the CMDB item, you now have an item linked to the ticket that represents what it is that you're going to be shipping. And when that ticket is delivered to the person who does the job of shipping it, they look for the linked configuration item to say, oh, I see you need us to ship out the following items, right? If you have an authorization cycle that has to happen somewhere in there before the product gets shipped, Footprints can easily evoke its change management process. So in that way, you can make sure that somebody has authorized the request before it moves into the shipping stage. But in the end, we are all service providers, and shipping out a package is simply another type of service we provide. Perhaps we call it logistics services inside of our organization. But the categorization of logistics services, and then what kind of logistics services, shipping, right? What kind of shipping am I doing? That becomes my third layer of category. Once I've categorized the issue, shipping software, shipping hardware, shipping desktop, shipping whatever I'm sending, once I've categorized the issue and linked out the product that I'm going to be shipping, I send it to the service provider through an assignment. The service provider who provides that shipping service evaluates the ticket, looks at what needs to be shipped based on what's in the CMDB, and ships those products accordingly. That would be basically my down and dirty quick engineering of how one would go about making that happen. Access requests, processes, phases, escalations. This question is really the bulk of our discussion this afternoon. We have lots of folks that ask us about how to manage users, right? And it's a common thing. They have footprints, they want to be able to use it to manage people, and there are a few different ways that you might be able to go about doing it, but most folks just kind of get writer's block, stare at footprints for a while and go, I have no idea how I'm really going to leverage it to do that. This is where we come in. And on the call with us, we have Aaron Carey, one of the renowned footprints experts in the field. You've probably seen Aaron's posts on various and sundry community sites for BMC and formerly Numara. He works with us hand in hand to enable some of these processes for our customers. And we're going to pass control to Aaron so that he can begin to show the information necessary. So I'm going to ask our kind host of the webcast to pass control over to Aaron right now so that folks on the call and on the webcast can see Aaron's screen, and therefore Aaron can begin his discussion. So thanks very much. This has been Greg Gilda with Flycast Partners, and I'm going to turn this over to Aaron Carey now so that he can speak to you about user access management.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. What a great introduction.
I made it all up, man. I was lying a little, but it's okay.
All good things. All good things. That is one of the big questions we get asked a lot is how do we manage users? How do we, and then on top of that, how can you automate the process to get approvals using the change management, using some of these other features that footprints that, you guys have paid for, but sometimes rarely get to use. And a couple things I like to use with this is not only the change management, but also the SQL mapper. I think the SQL mapper gets overlooked a lot as a feature in what it can actually do for you in pulling in information from other data sources and being able to leverage that. Being able to leverage that is huge, especially in some of your footprint stuff where you might have to use some of that information, especially from maybe the CMDB or something like that. For for user access, everyone that I usually talk to always starts out by creating a form with a bunch of checkboxes. I need this, 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 and this. And that's where I started a long time ago when doing it as well. But what we find out is we're very limited with checkboxes. Checkboxes are nice, and hopefully they'll listen to us on the forum and put more functionality in the checkboxes. But as of right now, we don't have much in the way of doing anything with checkboxes. It's just there. You can't make it mandatory. It's just on or off. We can't automate against it. If you want to automate against it, you have to write your own JavaScript, which with the new version 11.6, the new dependencies kind of make that obsolete, which is really nice. So I'm going to show you kind of how I create this form and how I'm using some ideas that hopefully you're new to some people. I know I've talked to several people on the forum about this, so if you've read the post, this will be kind of a review. But with this, oh, gotta love Java. With this form, what I do is I create a bunch of yes/no drop-downs for my items, and then if I have any qualifying questions, because when you're creating a new hire, we want to try to capture as much information, or new hire, or change, or deactivate, anything. We want to capture as much information as possible so we don't have to keep calling that person and saying, hey, what kind of access do you need? What do you need with this? What do you need with that? So what I do is we create these qualifying questions. If I select desktop, I have my accessories, laptop accessories, tablet. We're going to ask what type of tablet. And you might even go as far as to say what version, 2, 3, 4, iPad Air, Android, whatever. I'm not familiar with Android or Microsoft tablets, but I know they just came out with a new Surface, so you can quantify it there. Monitors, single, double, triple. What size do you want it? Going into software, just ask these qualifying questions up front so we gather all that information. Same thing with applications. It's like with FootPrints access. I'm sure some of you, or I'm sure most of us, have all gotten the question, the question posed to us through email, I need FootPrints access. Well, if you manage multiple FootPrints installations or have multiple FootPrints workspaces, that really means nothing to you. FootPrints access, great. What do you need access to? So what we can do is ask them the questions, do you want customer or agent access? Maybe give them a blurb about what a customer and an agent is. Customer can only submit, agents can submit, edit, and close. And then give them a list of your workspaces. Say, okay, which workspace do you need? And maybe even another one that says what team do you need to be on within those workspaces. So let's try to get all that information up front so we don't have to call the user to get that information. Or if there's extra information, we can put admin read only. There's actually a cool feature that with SQL, that using the SQL mapper, you can actually query your AD through SQL, which is something we can definitely help you set up as well. So you can actually query AD for file folders, for specific, if you have AD groups set up for specific permissions inside of an application. Like I know one company I worked with had Cognos, and they had about 200 or 300 different Cognos permissions set up within their security groups in AD. And depending on what level you needed of the security groups you got put in, and those changed all the time. So instead of being a list manager, I just use a SQL manager to query that list in AD and pull that information back down. So that's kind of a cool way of using the SQL mapper to, to help get yourself out of that list management. Because that's one thing I see a lot of times as well, is when getting into something like this, into user management stuff, some people put in a lot of lists, like lists for approvers for the change management stuff. This is one thing, when I saw that question about the change management process and phases, FootPrints has the ability to take a field on your form now and create an approval from that field on the form, but you have to use your primary key of whatever you've set your address book for. And most people use the user ID, which is mapped to your SAM account name in your Active Directory. So what we can do is set up I'll show you this in the change management. We can set up is like my supervisor one here, I can set up my my approval to go to my user ID. Now, again, I'm using the SQL mapper to go out and grab that user ID from Active Directory so I know it's correct. Because if I have users just try to manually type it in, they can fast finger the user ID and then my approval doesn't go anywhere. Which in that case, I can put myself as the backup approver. So if I ever get an approval, I know someone didn't do something correctly. But that's a feature that I haven't seen a lot of people use, but it is something that's very cool. So you can kind of dynamically do approvals in your workspaces throughout. So you don't have to have that list of approvers that every time someone leaves or comes or goes, you don't have to keep updating that list. You just give them a direct link to AD through the SQL mapper, and bam, you got that information. And you can query anything to AD, which is really cool. Now, one other thing on the form, sometimes people ask you to do certain things. They want certain data points. They want certain, maybe certain automations, certain things that doesn't really make sense to put a visible field on the form because it's just a data point. It doesn't really mean anything. You're going to set it with an escalation, or maybe you set it with an auto field, or set it with a dependency, something to that effect. So what we would do is you can create, what I do is I create this admin use only tab. And on this admin use only tab, I have checkboxes, just text fields I'm using for stuff. I have drop downs, multi-lines, all sorts of different fields that I'm using for different data points and different automations behind the screen. So what you can do is create, someone wants that data point, okay, create a checkbox, create a hidden checkbox on the form for when things are closed or when things hit a certain status during the month. I've seen it where several managers want to know, I want to know how many tickets we had in this status every month. Well, it's kind of hard to go back and look at that through the reports or sift through them. So if you have that checkbox to say, this ticket hit that status, all of a sudden you can run a report and see that status, or see all the tickets that hit that specific status or that specific situation during the course of its life cycle. So you can use these hidden fields here to do a whole bunch of stuff, which is what I'm doing in the UAN as well. And just to kind of show you what you can do with, as far as JavaScript goes, I know some companies have different opinions on JavaScript. Some like it, some don't. I happen to be a very big proponent of it. And here is one of the cool features of 11.6, the dependencies. So I can hide and show stuff, different fields, based on what I select here in my box, which before 11.6, we would have to, I would have to JavaScript all this because it would be in that nasty pop-up that no one really liked, and then we were very limited because you couldn't do anything else in this. So now what I can do here is I can actually do drop-down after drop-down after drop-down, or dependency after dependency after dependency, and not have to worry about it because now I can do this and keep going. So for like new hires, I gather all my personal information, whatever HR would like me to collect, my title, my department, and my employee number. Now, one cool thing also using the SQL mapper, say you wanted to create in this department or in title, you wanted to create what I like to call roles-based changes. What you can do is we can set up the roles in another workspace or in the CMDB or somewhere that we can query. So I can say if you're hiring an IT help desk tech, or if you're hiring another junior admin for FootPrints, you know what this person's going to have. You know that they're going to have, dual 24-inch monitors. They're going to need a laptop. They're going to need a cell phone. They're going to need, Snagit. They're going to need Visio. They're going to need ABC systems. You know what that person needs to get hired. We can create those as roles and kind of pre-populate this ticket, this new hire or change ticket, with that information, so we can, so the person entering this information doesn't necessarily have to know all that. If it's a brand new manager, you might not know, they might not know what all their new person needs, but at least with those templates, we can now get them that information quickly. So what we do is, I'm not going to mirror existing user. Some companies like that, some don't. And then we go down to the management information. And this is a piece where I was talking about the SQL mapper going against AD. I don't have AD set up here at my house, but what it would do now is, by putting this user ID in here, if I have an approval that needs to go to my supervisor, I can now send that to my supervisor. Or I could send it to that to my manager or my executive, based on what approvals I might need to automate. Then next we go through and ask, okay, what type of hardware, software does this person need? I like to split it up between hardware, software, applications, and then kind of have another section. I've also put IT only, or this group only, or that group only, to kind of split things up so we don't get one long, big, nasty form that our users don't like. So what we do is we go down and select what we need. Let's say I don't want a desktop. I want a laptop with pretty much everything. I want an iPad. I want my dual 24-inch monitors. I don't really need a printer. I am going to need some special software. I'm going to need Snagit, Visio. I need a desk phone, whether it's a new or existing extension. If it's an existing one, which one are we going to repurpose? And I like my iPhone or my mobile phone. And then we go through and ask, what applications do we need? One good way to start thinking about this, if you're going to go down this road, is start thinking, A, what would need to be audited if you go through an audit, what stuff is audited, and B, what requires a user ID and password, and what do we want to ensure gets shut off when someone leaves or changes a position and needs different access. Between those three criteria, you can come up with a good list of stuff that you're going to track on your form for the new hires and for the access requests, because ultimately the goal of this is to, when someone leaves, shut all their access off so they can't get back in, so we don't get dinged at audit, and there's a great audit trail on how everything happened. Who requested it, who approved it, all the way down to who did it, because of the linking feature of FootPrint. So you select what they need. FootPrints, we say we're going to need a customer account in all three of those, and then I'm going to need a read-only access to whatever application this might be. And then in other places, I kind of use as a catch-all for stuff like badges, your corporate credit cards, key to the executive room, company car, things that really don't fit into application and hardware. And then here I also have my file folder access and distribution lists. And again, this can be, you could do a link to AD, a query to AD for this type of information as well, so you can make sure someone for file folder access doesn't just put the S drive or the R drive or whatever. They can actually list out the actual file folder path that they need. And then special instructions, we all have that details section. This is for special instructions. Don't give this guy any sharp objects or something like that. Some type of special instructions that might help with this new hire, but definitely not any systems access, because that will all be done through up here. And then what we do is, by using escalations, we create a single item for every single thing the person requested on the form. So it's like when I go look at my new hire here, we create an item and assign it for every single thing I added on the form: desktop, laptop, iPad, printers, so on and so forth, all the way down. And then what you can do is, using some of those hidden fields and stuff, you can tell it where to go, whether it needs to go to a facilities workspace, service desk workspace, security workspace to get work. You can set fields on there to do auto assignments, to have the tickets route to the correct group or go out and get approvals, or there's a whole slew of different things you can do with those hidden fields, which is huge for the automation pieces. And then you can keep track of everything here using the subtasks. And everything on the form you do creates that for your for you to track all the way back. And one custom piece that I've written for this is to actually link this back to a profile in a different workspace. It's a script I've used to link these together, so I can go back and look at my profile and see. This one isn't a good one. We can go back and see everything that's been done on this person. Let me go find this one's good because I've done a couple things on this one. So it's like for Lucy here, I've done a couple of different ones. We hired her, and then we've already made a change as well. So you can see that in her profile. And if you want to see what happened, we can just click the details. Here we can go to these. We can see, okay, we removed her laptop, and then I think I've already deleted the workspace. But if you wanted to see the ticket that was done, you can actually go here, see the ticket that was done, and who actually removed that laptop and got it back from her. So you can see the entire cycle of something that happened with just a couple of clicks, which auditors just go crazy over, because usually to find out that information, it takes them hours of digging versus 30 seconds of clicking. So utilizing these just baked-in features of FootPrints are awesome to be able to find that information back and forth. And then here also, it just gives you a snapshot in the profile of what this person has at any point in time. So you can go run a report and say, okay, I want to see everyone who has desktops, everyone who has laptops, everyone who has access to ABC system. You can see that all real clear, real quickly, and run reports of it anytime, which managers and the higher ups always love reports. Always love more and more reports. Now, one other thing that I wanted to show you guys here as kind of an admin trick. We all use emails, right? So we all have email going in and out all the time. But one thing that we don't, actually, let me go to a different workspace for this one. One thing that we don't always do is customize those emails. Now, the FootPrints emails that come out of the system, unfortunately, are not the prettiest emails. They're very hard to read, and they kind of disheveled based on the information you want to add, because you can go in here and add all that information, but it's not laid out in a nice, pretty layout that can be understood easily. And I am not finding one of my emails like I thought I would. So one thing that I've done, all right, we'll just go back over here. One thing that I've done is gone in and customized those emails to look a certain way. And I'll just use one of my change manager emails because it's they all follow the same format. But you can do the same for all your escalation emails as well. And this will kind of make you a hero to your clients because of the format that you're going to put it in. If you put it in a nice, easy to read format that you can customize very easily through HTML, then your guys on the help desk, your customers will be able to read these notifications, be much happier, much easier to understand. And all of a sudden, people are like, "Wow, how'd you do that? This is so much easier." And it's a lot of fun getting to be the hero and making these things look a lot cleaner and a lot simpler than they are. than they are normally, because those, man, I cannot iterate how much those emails that come out of here originally are just not very easily read. And I know a lot of you have experienced that that as well, because a lot of people don't use the custom email templates. One other thing that I would suggest in looking at email stuff with this as well, try not to use the built-in email stuff here. Try to use escalations instead, because this can tend to send out too many or too little email. And with something, especially with something like a user access workspace, if you're going to be creating a lot of sub-tickets, creating a lot of tickets to work, you don't want emails to go out every time something's created. You don't want emails to go out for every time something changes, or some people are really going to hate you, because you're going to be just inundating their emails or their inboxes with emails, and then all of a sudden they're going to set up that rule to just send them to the recycle bin, and they're not going to pay attention to them, and they just kind of get lost in the shuffle. So that's about all I had for the user access management, onboarding, offboarding, access request stuff. There's obviously a lot more to it. I wish I could take questions from everybody, but definitely if you do, let us know. We can definitely help get this set up for you in a cool way that'll help streamline your onboarding and offboarding process.
Aaron, perfect. Thanks very much. I think it was very useful information, especially with the volume of folks, certainly that we run into, who are asking for that very thing, right? How do we more effectively manage user access? How do we control it? We have this really cool tool in FootPrints, very powerful, does lots of stuff. In fact, most folks on the call are probably using it for workflow completely outside of IT. If you're not, you're
right
in the minority. 80% of the folks on the planet are using it for something outside of IT because it's a powerful workflow engine. So that capability is built into FootPrints to a large degree. And by just using the tool in a slightly more creative way, you can have access to features and functions such as the stuff that you just got done talking about. So I think it's brilliant use, really. As Aaron said, if there are any questions or are any additional info that you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We've got folks standing by manning our website, which is www.flycastpartners.com. So we have the ability to work with you and help you with user access management or any of your other questions that you might have regarding the FootPrints suite of solutions. This includes FootPrints Asset Core and FootPrints Service Core. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Don't hesitate to show up on more of these events or to continue to ask us questions. We really appreciate the opportunity to interact with you all and very much appreciate your attendance on this, another one of our Flycast Partners webcasts. Thank you all very much, and we hope you enjoy the remainder of your afternoon. Take care.